Hey, it's great to have you watching CNN Student News as our daily current events coverage resumes today. I'm Carl Azus. First up, late last week, the director of the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation sent a letter to Congress. It said the FBI had recently discovered more emails that may be related to an investigation concerning Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. The background: while she was U.S. Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013, Clinton used a private email server instead of a government one. This gave Clinton more control over what emails were shared with the government. The FBI says her server was less secure than a government one. Clinton said she never sent or received information that was classified, containing U.S. government secrets. But in July, FBI Director James Comey said a very small number of her emails were marked as having classified information. He called Clinton and her colleagues, quote, extremely careless in how they handled classified info, but said the FBI did not find clear evidence that they intended to break the law. The agency did not recommend criminal charges against Clinton, and none were filed. And Clinton said it was a mistake to use a private server and that she would not do it again. So what's going on now? While investigating a separate case, the FBI says it found new emails that appeared to be related to the Clinton investigation. House Speaker Paul Ryan says Clinton betrayed Americans' trust by mishandling highly classified information. But Clinton says the FBI has, quote, no case, and her campaign says the agency is breaking its own custom of staying out of election year politics. The FBI's review of the new emails is not likely to be finished by Election Day next Tuesday. Up next, Iraqi-led troops are on the outskirts of Mosul, 2 weeks into an operation to retake the city from ISIS terrorists. The Iraqis have come up against roadblocks, snipers, and landmines, and there are reports that ISIS has taken thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, into the city to use as human shields. With the fiercest fighting ahead, Arwa Damon gives a sense of what's happened on the advance.
A sandstorm has just swept in, adding another layer of difficulty and challenges to this current push around the town of Gökçeli. This is the closest that Iraqi forces have been to Mosul since ISIS swept through and took it over more than 2 years ago. And throughout the course of the day, they have been coming across artillery fire, exchanging it, mortar fire, rocket fire, and sporadically some pretty intense small arms fire exchanges as well. They don't know exactly how many ISIS fighters are here because the commander says ISIS is moving its assets between Gökçeli and the city of Mosul itself. We are less than a kilometer away from its outskirts. But what ISIS has been doing, and what we saw them do on this day, is seemingly send small groups of fighters to try to circle around and to attack the more fixed positions that the Iraqis have been setting up. ISIS does regularly sneak up on forces, and this particular position did not receive any incoming fire all morning, but then a few rounds came in, and they believe that they spotted 3 fighters just around that house right there. A rocket strike was then called in to take out what was believed to be the ISIS fighters' positions. Now, the commanders here say that they are going through, compared to other areas, very slowly, very methodically, and that is mostly because there are around 25,000 civilians believed to still be inside Gökçeli, which makes things like calling in an airstrike or using their artillery or rocket fire that much more difficult, because it has to be very precise. Otherwise, they risk causing significant civilian casualties. Arwa Damon, CNN, Gökçeli, Iraq.
But since the late summer, multiple groups have been involved in protesting the Dakota Access Pipeline, and several camps have sprung up, with demonstrators using tents, teepees, makeshift shelters, and RVs as housing. Some of the protests have been peaceful, some haven't. Activists in some cases have locked themselves to construction equipment being used to build the pipeline, or destroyed the equipment altogether. But many say they're planning to demonstrate against the pipeline throughout the winter.
Family, peaceful, prayers. You're not here to fight.
This was the calm before 141 people ended up in handcuffs. Hundreds of people blocking a highway and a piece of land for one cause, trying to stop the North Dakota Access Pipeline in its tracks.
When they saw this military force coming over, it took us back to the days of the cavalry riding in and wiping out a village.
Protesters blocked a highway, set up camp in the pipeline's path. As things got more intense, cars and a piece of construction equipment went up in flames.
Probably a large number of them, maybe even the majority of them, were being peaceful. However, there's a group within that mix that are not peaceful. When you're throwing Molotov cocktails at law enforcement officers, you produce a handgun and fire 3 rounds at law enforcement officers, nobody would just describe that situation as peaceful.
And police moved in, using pepper spray, beanbag rounds, and ear-splitting sirens to push protesters off this particular strip of land. This is that same encampment. The protesters have been cleared out, and just across the highway, they wasted no time. The Dakota Access Pipeline project is in full swing. The protesters, including members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, denounced violence, saying they are only trying to protect their way of life, their sacred sites, and their water, worried about the potential of pipeline ruptures that could poison their water supply.
This is the only source of water for 6 reservations. It's not only important to the reservations, but all the farms and ranches and townships and municipalities from here to the Gulf of Mexico.
But their attempts to stop the project have failed so far, and police say they are just following the law. So the dispute is clearly over the pipeline. This land right here, is this considered, from the opinion of law enforcement, private property here in the North Camp?
Yes, the land behind us here is private property. As far as...
So not the tribe's property?
Absolutely correct. It's private property behind us. As far as North Dakota law and any law says, we're north of the reservation where we're at right now.
The tribe says a 19th century treaty disputes that, and they say the land was stolen from them.
That treaty was broken, and therefore we feel that every land sale after that date was unlawful.
At first glance, looks like this kid's dribbling 2 giant basketballs. But a wider camera shot shows you how he's just a really young player. 3 years old. His name is Carter. His parents play, so he's been around the game his whole life. And they say he's a triple threat. He can dribble, pass, and yes, shoot. Probably won't be long before this boy of 3 is sinking 3-pointers. His advice? One word: practice. And it's paying off, considering that most 3-year-olds are just dribbling food, making fast breaks on toys, dunking rubber duckies, doing free throws with their lunch, stealing their parents' keys, traveling places they shouldn't, rebounding from short naps, and doing full court presses on their babysitter's nerves. For Carter, all of that is child's play. I'm Carl Azus, sinking puns once again for CNN Student News.